Good day, students. In this presentation, we will be looking at the requirements for the Bachelor of Education Senior&FET phase specialization. So, if you listen to this presentation, it will hopefully give you a good idea of what the requirements are for you to be able to complete your degree and graduate. Now, the first key thing that you need to understand is the credits. The minimum number of credits for the Bachelor of Education degree in general is 512. So that is the minimum number of credits that any B.Ed student can obtain and graduate with. In this particular phase, however, the structure of the qualification means that most students obtain 520 credits. So, if you are in this phase, you are probably aiming to obtain 520 credits or more by the end of the year. Now, I said or more because it is possible that you may have picked up a few extra credits along the way, particularly if you changed phase at any point. Obtaining more credits is not a problem for graduation. It certainly does not prevent you from graduating. It is generally not recommended, however, for students to take more than the minimum required credits. So for most of you, you are aiming for 520 credits by the end of 2021. The second important thing that you need to understand is that when we say that this is a 4-year qualification, what we actually mean is that you have to be registered for 8 semesters. Now, for most of you, that's not a problem because you've registered every year, every semester since your first year. So for most of you, you will have registered 6 semesters already. Some of you might be returning to finish off a few outstanding modules, so it is possible you might be on your 9th semester. That's fine. What is not fine is to try to complete the degree in fewer than 8 semesters. So if you are doing your 7th semester and your 6th semester this year, please do not think that you will graduate at the end of the year. In order to graduate, you have to have been registered for 8 semesters for the B.Ed degree. Now, the one exception to this, if you can call it an exception, is for students who've transferred, either from another qualification within UKZN or possibly from another institution, such as UNISA. Now, for those students who've transferred, if you completed modules which we recognize within our qualification, and we have exempt you with credit from some of our modules based on the modules you have passed elsewhere, then it is possible that we have also recognized a semester or 2 that you were registered in your other institution or for your other qualification. These semesters that we recognize from outside the B.Ed, these are referred to as deemed semesters. So if you are a transfer student, it is possible that you do have 1 or maybe even 2 deemed semesters that we recognize. If you transferred, however, and did not bring any credits that we recognized, so if we have not exempt you with credit from any of our modules, then we will not have recognized any semesters for you either. And you will have to register for 8 semesters for the B.Ed. So please ensure that by the end of 2021, when you are hoping to complete and graduate, that you actually have been recognized as having 8 semesters registered for the degree. Finally, each phase has a number of specific phase requirements that we refer to as curriculum requirements, and it is essential that you meet the requirements for your particular phase. Now, there are similarities across the different phases, but there are also some differences. So it is very important to understand the requirements for your phase to ensure that you don't confuse your phase requirements with somebody else's. So what are these phase requirements? The first requirement for the curriculum is a common requirement across all phases, and these are what we refer to as core modules. So core modules are the modules that everybody does regardless of what phase you are registered for. The first of the compulsory modules are your education studies modules. So most of you by now should have completed Education Studies 210, 220, 310 and 320 and are probably registering for 410 and 420 this year. Secondly, there are your Professional Studies modules, and again everybody should have completed Prof 110, 120 and 210 already, and you should be registering in this phase for Prof Studies 230 in the second semester this year. The 230 is in red and bold because this is not the same for all the phases. Everybody does do 4 Prof Studies modules, but the last one depends on what phase you are in. So in Senior&FET, you do Prof Studies 230. Then there are your teaching practice modules. So hopefully everybody has managed to pass teaching practice 120, 220 and 320 so far, and will be registering for TP 420. Please note that if you haven't completed a prior TP module, so if you haven't completed teaching practice 320 for any reason, then you have to register that one before you can register for 420. If that applies to you, then please liaise with Mrs. Van Wyk about registration of 420. Then in first year, all of you should have done computer literacy, academic literacy in English, which we commonly refer to as ALE, and then a minimum of 1 foundation module. So most of you should have already completed either Africa in a Globalizing World, or Diversity and Learning, or Perspectives on Human Nature, or Mathematics 110. You should have one of those already. It is unlikely that any of you would have done critical inquiry in ECD unless you originally registered possibly for foundation phase and did it in first year, in which case we will recognize it as a foundation module. But generally in this phase, you will not have been able to do critical inquiry in ECD. The second requirement is in relation to languages. Now there are 2 policies that are applicable here. The first one is the university's language policy around isiZulu, and that is that every student registered at UKZN for an undergraduate degree has to complete a module in isiZulu communication. So if you are a non-speaker of isiZulu, in other words, you either speak no Zulu at all, or you just know a very small amount of Zulu, then you would pick up conversational isiZulu 110. And for most of you in this phase, you would be picking it up in the first semester of this year. If you are a mother tongue speaker of isiZulu and have possibly done isiZulu as a subject at grade 12 level, and you can speak, read and write isiZulu, then you would be doing communication in isiZulu 110. So mother tongue speakers do communication in isiZulu 110 and non-speakers conversational isiZulu 110. The second policy is in relation to the requirements for the B.Ed degree, and that is that everybody in the B.Ed degree has to do 1 module of a second language. Now, second language in this particular context means a language other than English. So if you do the isiZulu module, then that is also your compulsory second language module. So by doing isiZulu, you satisfy both requirements, the requirements of the university as well as the requirement of the degree. Now, if you want to teach isiZulu, so you're a mother tongue speaker of isiZulu and you're specializing in isiZulu as a teaching specialization, then you have to also have completed Communication in isiZulu 120. If you want to teach English, so you want to specialize as an English teacher, then you are required to have completed either English language course, commonly called ELC, or English Communication 110. So in other words, if you want to teach a language, then you have to have completed 2, what we refer to as communication modules in that language. So either for Zulu, Communication in isiZulu 110 and 120, or for English, you will have ALE, and then either English language course or English Communication 110. It is also possible to do both of these modules, as the content of the modules is completely different. Now you'll see I've listed Afrikaans Communicasie 110 there as well. Most of you would not have had an opportunity to do this, as we have not offered it as an option for quite a while. But if you started your degree quite a few years ago, left and have come back to complete, then it is possible that you would have done Afrikaans Communicasie 110. Now this module, if you have done it, it does count as the compulsory second language module. However, if you registered in a year where the Zulu language policy for the university had come into effect, then you would still need to do the conversational isiZulu module. If you are a mother tongue speaker of Zulu, then there is a possibility that you could ask to be exempt from the Communication in isiZulu 110 module, but that would be an exemption without credit. Now, the other requirements on relation to your actual phase specializations. So for the FET part of your specialization, you choose one FET specialization, and in this subject you have to complete 5, or a minimum of 5 content modules. Now each FET subject has 6 content modules, of course, because they go from 210 all the way up to 420. But the actual curriculum rule for the B.Ed specifies that you have to complete a minimum of 5. So obviously, the disciplines will be quite happy if you choose to do all 6 content modules in their specialization. But if you do 5, that is acceptable as well. Now, if you only do 5, then the 6th module can be replaced with any other 16 credit module. So in your phase, it specifies that you must complete 5 FET content modules, a minimum of 5. Then, of course, your FET specialization has 3 methods. So by now you should have passed method 1 and method 2 and be registering for your method 3 in the 2nd semester. For your senior phase specializations, you have 2 subject specializations. One of these 2 specializations or learning areas has to be either mathematics or natural science or technology education. Now, it is possible that you've done both of your specializations out of these 3. So obviously if you've done maths and natural science, or maths and technology, or natural science and technology, that is okay as well. But everybody has to do at least one of these. Your other learning area can be any of the others. Now, I will go through the list of learning areas and their modules once I have finished this particular slide. But for each learning area, you have to complete the 3 content modules and the 2 method modules as prescribed in the college handbook. So there are specific modules that make up these learning areas, and you have to complete those specific modules. Finally, once you add up your credits, you might find that you are short of the required 512 or 520 credits, in which case you need to pick up elective modules. So in other words, elective modules are modules that you are picking up just to get you to the correct number of credits. So the purpose of electives is to get you to that 512 or 520 credit goal. Now, if you do not have a pass at matric level for either core mathematics or for mathematical literacy, then it is compulsory for you to have taken mathematics for life and teaching, or possibly you could have done basic mathematics instead. So a pass is 30% and higher. So if you did not achieve 30% or higher for mathematics or maths literacy in grade 12, then you should have already completed, or you need to register for mathematics for life and teaching. In terms of the basic mathematics, if you started off in one of the primary phases, then it is possible that you did do maths literacy basic mathematics instead, in which case we will count that in place of maths for life and teaching. But you have to pass one of these two modules in order to graduate. If you do have a matric pass in mathematics, but your mark was very low, maybe in the 30s or 40s, and you did do maths for life and teaching or basic mathematics, then we will accept that as an elective module. But if you got 50% or higher for core maths or maths literacy, then these modules are not for you. Okay, they are not electives for all students to take. They are only there for the students who do not meet the maths requirement. So please do not try and do this module if you have a decent pass for maths or maths literacy in grade 12. In terms of the other elective modules, they can be anything. There is no rule about what your elective modules are. So you can do a second foundation module. You could do another communication module. So if you've done Zulu Communication 120 or Conversational isiZulu 120 or ELC or English Com 110, those would all count as elective modules. You can also do a content module for an FET subject or another learning area. You could also possibly do an extra method module, or in some cases, some students even ask permission to do modules from the intermediate phase that are related to their subject specializations. So the elective modules are there just to get you to 512 or 520 credits, most likely. So if you are wondering whether or not to register for electives, what you need to do firstly is ascertain how many credits you've already passed. Have a look at how many compulsory curriculum credits you are registering for this year, and then see if that gets you to your 512 that is required. If not, then you need to pick up elective modules. Now, for those of you who might be unsure about the learning areas, I've listed here on this slide the modules for each of the learning areas. So for some of them, specifically natural science, arts and culture, and life orientation, the modules are very easy to identify. So for example, natural science, its content is 110, 120, 210, and then you have natural science method 1 and method 2, and arts and culture and life orientation are similarly named. Technology is also fairly straightforward because you get technology education 111, 121, 220, method 1 and method 2. For mathematics and the languages, English and isiZulu, these modules, both the content and the methods, actually come from the FET specializations. So you do the 210, 220 and 310 content modules, as well as the method 1 and method 2 from the FET program. The two learning areas that students sometimes get confused with are social sciences and EMS. Now, for social sciences, you have to do geography 210, history 210, geography method 1, and history method 1. Those 4 modules are compulsory. But then you have a choice for the third content module. You can either do your geography 220 or you can do history 220 instead. But you have to have 3 content and 2 methods. EMS is a similar situation to social sciences. It's a mixture of two subjects. So for EMS, you have to have Accounting 210 and Business Management 210, as well as Accounting Method 1 and Business Management Method 1. You then have a choice for the third content module. You can complete either Accounting 220 or Business Management 220. So those are the modules that we look for when checking to see if you have completed your learning areas. Any deviations from these has to be approved by the relevant discipline or module coordinators, and it has to be recorded. So there are situations where we have allowed a student to deviate from one of these. So for example, maybe the student could not complete Geography 210 in the first semester because of an overload of credits, but was able to pick up Geography 320, well, let's say Geography 220 instead, and then they did History 210 and 220. A deviation like that, you cannot just do on your own. It has to be approved by the module lecturer. So please don't just go and pick up any combination of geography and history or any combination of accounting and business management and think that is okay. These are the modules that we look for when we are checking you for degree complete. So if you have not done the correct modules, then what we check for is whether or not you have been exempt from the required module. So if a lecturer has given you permission to do, say, Geography 220 instead of Geography 210, together with the two History 210 and 220 modules, then we will look to see if they have completed an application for exemption form, and that would be an exemption without credit. Now, if the paperwork has been completed, it should be recorded against your academic record, and we should be able to pick that up during ERS checking. But if you have just spoken to somebody and gone and done the wrong module and have not completed the required paperwork to record that that was an actual decision that was negotiated and allowed by the relevant lecturers, then you will find yourself not completing your degree this year. So please make sure that you have completed the correct modules for the learning areas and that you have completed either natural science, technology, or mathematics. If you follow these rules, then you should find yourself completing your degree. If you do try and deviate, then you could find yourself in trouble. So please have a look at what you've completed so far, compare it to what I've spoken about here, identify anything that is outstanding or missing, and try to pick up those modules this year so that hopefully you can complete your degree and graduate. All the best. Good luck for this year.